My 7-year-old son whispered to me, "Daddy has a lover, and when you travel, they're going to take all your money." He said it while I was tucking him in, his small arms wrapped tight around my neck, his breath smelling of mint toothpaste and childhood innocence. He didn't say it with fear. He said it with the flat, factual certainty that only a child can possess. He had been holding this secret, a heavy stone in his small pocket, waiting for the moment I was most vulnerable, the night before my big trip. Before we decode this betrayal and execute the ultimate firewall, if you believe that a mother's intuition is the most sophisticated surveillance system on Earth, hit that subscribe button. You don't want to miss how this glitch gets fixed. Now, let's get into the story. My name is Imani Brooks. To my neighbors in this gated, ultra-exclusive enclave of Silicon Valley, I am a consultant. To my husband, Terrence, I am the workaholic wife who pays the bills but doesn't understand the street. But to the Federal Reserve and the 3 largest crypto exchanges in the world, I am the architect. I design digital vaults. Not the kind with codes. The kind with logic. I build the unhackable ledgers that hold trillions of dollars in assets. My mind is a fortress of algorithms, encryption keys, and fail-safes. I am a woman who notices if a pixel is out of place on a monitor. And yet, I had missed the man sleeping next to me. I pulled back from my son, Trey, looking into his serious brown eyes. "Who told you that, baby?" I whispered, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "I heard them," Trey said. "In the garage. Daddy and Ms. Dominique. They said when the plane takes off, the window opens. They said they're going to use your thumb." My blood turned to liquid nitrogen. Dominique. My executive house manager. The woman I paid 6 figures a year to run my life so I could focus on my code. The woman who had been smiling at me over coffee for 3 years. And use my thumb? That was the detail that turned this from an affair into a heist. I kissed Trey on the forehead. "Go to sleep, baby. Mommy isn't going anywhere." I walked out of his room. I didn't go to the master bedroom. I walked to the bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the edge of the tub. I needed to think. My trip was to Zurich. A keynote speech at a global security summit. It was public. It was high profile. And it was the perfect distraction. But the thumb? My biometric security was legendary. My master key, the device that controlled the access to my clients' vaults, required a chaotic, shifting combination of my retina, my voice, and my right thumbprint. But it required a live pulse. You couldn't just cut off a thumb, a thought that made me shudder. Unless they had found a way to bypass the liveness test. Unless they had a copy. I thought back to 2 weeks ago. The accident. I had cut my thumb on a broken wine glass Dominique had dropped. She had been so helpful. She had cleaned it. She had put on the bandage. She had kept the glass. She had a 3D mold. And Terrence, my husband, the failed real estate developer who always needed just one more loan, he was the insider. The hook was set. They weren't just stealing my money. They were planning to use my biometrics to loot the Onyx ledger, a holding account containing $400 billion in client assets. If they succeeded, I wouldn't just be broke. I would be the greatest villain in financial history. I would be in federal prison for life for facilitating the theft. They were framing me. I canceled the trip and did something else instead. I walked into the bedroom. Terrence was packing his gym bag, humming. He looked at me, flashing that dazzling smile that had charmed me 10 years ago. "Ready for the big flight, babe? Car's coming at 5 a.m., right?" "Change of plans," I said, my voice smooth, betraying nothing. The summit was moved to virtual. Security threat in Zurich. "I'm not flying." Terrence froze. His hand, holding a pair of socks, stopped in midair. "Virtual?" he asked, his voice tight. "But, you have to be there. It's the keynote." "I'll do it from the home office," I said, unbuttoning my blouse. It's better, actually. I can be here with you and Trey. I watched him. I watched the panic flicker in his eyes. He looked at his phone. He was texting her. Dominique. That's great, he stammered. But I actually have a guy's trip planned. Since I thought you were leaving. The boys and I are going to Vegas for the weekend. I can't cancel. Oh, I said, feigning disappointment. Well, go. Have fun. Dominique can handle the house while I work. He relaxed. He thought the plan was still on. He thought he just had to shift the timeline. He thought he could coordinate with Dominique while I was working in my office. He didn't know that my home office wasn't just a room with a computer. It was a trap. The next morning, Terrence kissed me goodbye, grabbed his bag, and left. Dominique arrived at 8 a.m., smiling her viper smile. Good morning, Mrs. Brooks. Shame about Zurich. Yes, I said. I'll be in the server room all weekend. Do not disturb me. I'm running a level 5 diagnostic. If you open that door, the system will lock down. Understood, she said. I'll just tidy up the guest wing. I went into my server room, a climate-controlled, steel-reinforced bunker in the basement. I locked the heavy door. But I didn't work. I initiated Protocol Ghost. I pulled up the internal surveillance grid. I had cameras everywhere. Not the ones they knew about. The micro cameras hidden in the smoke detectors, the vents, the eyes of the artwork. I saw Terrence's car turn around down the street. He parked 3 houses down. He snuck back onto the property through the side gate. Dominique let him in the back door. They embraced. It wasn't romantic. It was desperate. She's in the bunker, Dominique hissed. We can't get to the physical terminal. We don't need the terminal, Terrence said, pulling a strange, gray device from his bag. We just need the signal. You said you installed the repeater? I did, Dominique said. Under her desk. Last week. My eyes went to my desk. I looked underneath. There it was. A small, black box. A signal cloner. They were going to clone my biometric signature while I was using it. They didn't need to break in. They were going to piggyback on my session, use the fake thumbprint to authorize a parallel login, and drain the accounts while I was working. 3 days later. I spent those 3 days working. I typed. I authorized low-level transactions. I fed the beast. I let them capture my keystrokes. I let them clone my retina scan. I watched them on the monitors. They were camped out in the guest house, huddled over laptops, high-fiving as they cracked my firewalls. They thought they were geniuses. They had no idea they were hacking into a sandbox. I had created a mirror universe. A fake Onyx ledger. A simulation that looked, acted, and felt exactly like the real banking system, but contained absolutely nothing but digital air. I watched as Terrence transferred $50 million to his Cayman account. I watched Dominique transfer $20 million to a shell corp in Singapore. I watched them celebrate. They drank my expensive champagne. They slept in my guest bed. They laughed about how stupid I was. She's a coder, Terrence laughed on day 2. She has no street smarts. She thinks numbers are real life. We just took her for everything, and she's sitting downstairs thanking us. I sat in the cold blue light of the server room, eating a protein bar. Enjoy it, Terrence, I whispered to the screen. Because you just stole a simulation. But then, I saw something that made me sit up. The hidden secret suspense arrived. Terrence was on the phone. A burner phone. It's done, he said. The transfer is complete. We have the assets. No, she's still alive. We didn't have to intervene. He listened. His face went pale. I understand, he said. No loose ends. Tonight. When she comes out of the bunker. He hung up. He looked at Dominique. The client isn't happy with just the money, Terrence whispered. He wants the architect removed. He says if she's alive, she can reverse it. She can trace it. So? Dominique shrugged. She pulled a small, glass vial from her purse. I've been putting the digitalis in her coffee for weeks to weaken her heart. One big dose tonight. Cardiac arrest caused by stress and overwork. It's clean. I stopped chewing. They weren't just thieves. They were assassins. And I had been drinking that coffee. I felt a flutter in my chest. I had ignored it, thinking it was anxiety. I checked my pulse watch. 110 BPM. Resting. I wasn't just fighting for my money. I was fighting for my life. I looked at the door. It was a heavy steel blast door. It was locked from the inside. But if I didn't come out, they would come in. They had explosives. I had seen them in Terrence's bag. I had to act. I had to turn the sandbox into a weapon. I looked at the simulated accounts they had stolen. They thought they had moved money. What they had actually done was authorize a smart contract. A contract I had written 3 days ago. A contract that didn't send money out. It sent a signal in. I typed a command line. Execute, protocol blackout. Target, local grid. Authorization, thumbprint. I placed my thumb on the scanner. The lights in the house went out. The lights in the neighborhood went out. And the electronic locks on the guest house, the ones I controlled, slammed shut. They were trapped in the dark. And I was coming out. The house was a tomb of silence wrapped in total darkness. The only light came from the faint, blue pulse of the backup generator panel in the hallway, a heartbeat in the void. I stepped out of the server room. My legs felt heavy, like they were filled with wet sand. The digitalis. It was already in my system. My heart was fluttering, a bird trapped in a cage, beating in irregular, frantic rhythm. Thump thump, pause, thump. I checked my watch. My pulse was 125. Dangerous. I had to move fast. If my heart rate spiked too high, I would go into cardiac arrest, exactly as they had planned. I made my way to the kitchen. I didn't need light. I had memorized every inch of this house when I designed it. I fumbled in the emergency medical kit under the sink. Charcoal tablets. Not perfect, but they would bind to the remaining toxins in my stomach. I chewed them dry, the gritty black dust coating my mouth. Then, I went to the smart panel by the fridge. It was dead to the eye, but active on the encrypted subnet. I pulled up the feed from the guest house. The infrared cameras painted the scene in ghostly greens and whites. Terrence and Dominique were frantic. They were clawing at the electronic locks on the French doors. They were trapped. The protocol blackout had engaged the magnetic storm shutters. They were sealed in a steel box. Open the door, damn it. Terrence screamed, throwing a chair at the shutter. It bounced off harmlessly. The power is out. Dominique yelled, using the flashlight on her phone. The signal is dead. The transfer, did it go through? I don't know. Terrence shouted. The laptop died when the grid went down. I tapped the microphone icon on the panel. My voice, distorted by the system to sound metallic and omnipresent, filled the guest house. The transfer went through, Terrence. They froze. They looked up at the ceiling, at the hidden speakers. Imani? Terrence whispered. The fear in his voice was palpable. You stole $400 billion, I said, my voice calm despite the fire in my veins. Congratulations. You are the richest thieves in history. Let us out. Dominique shrieked. You can't keep us here. I can, I said. I own the walls. I own the air you're breathing. The ventilation system is currently set to recirculate. It gets stuffy in there after an hour. I wouldn't hyperventilate if I were you. Imani, baby, Terrence tried, switching to his charm, though he looked like a cornered rat in the green night vision. This is a misunderstanding. We were testing the system. For you. To see if it was secure. Stop, I said. I saw the digitalis, Terrence. I saw the vial. I know about the cardiac arrest. You weren't testing the system. You were deleting the admin. Silence. The charm evaporated. So what now? Terrence snarled. You call the cops? You turn us in? You think the client won't get to you in prison? You think you won't get to Trey? The mention of my son turned my fear into cold fusion. Trey is safe, I said. His room is in lockdown mode. It's a panic room. No one gets in without my biometric key. Not even you. You're dead anyway, Dominique spat. You drank the coffee. It's already working. I can hear it in your voice. You're breathless. She was right. My vision was blurring at the edges. Halos of light were forming in my peripheral vision, a classic symptom of digitalis toxicity. I am dying, I admitted. But I have enough time to finish this. Finish what? Terrence asked. You can't reverse the transfer. It's on the blockchain. It's gone. I don't want to reverse it, I said. I want to track it. I tapped the screen. I projected the sandbox data onto the monitor in the guest house so they could see it. You see, Terrence, I narrated, watching their faces turn to ash. You didn't hack the Onyx ledger. You hacked a mirror. A simulation. The money you stole, it's digital confetti. It's worth zero. No. Terrence whispered, staring at the screen. No, the codes, they worked. They worked because I let them work, I said. But here is the interesting part. You sent that fake money somewhere. You sent it to a wallet address I didn't recognize. A blind drop. I zoomed in on the transaction log. Who is the client, Terrence? Who is the big man who wants me dead? I can't tell you, Terrence said, sweating. He's a ghost. He's the cipher. He runs the dark web exchanges. If I talk, he kills me. If you don't talk, I said, he kills you anyway. Think about it. You just sent him $400 billion of fake money. He's going to think you scammed him. Terrence's eyes went wide. He's watching the wallet, Terrence whispered. He's expecting the deposit. When he sees its dummy code, he's going to come for his refund, I finished. And he knows where you are. Just then, a heavy, booming sound echoed through the house. It came from the front gate. Boom. Someone had rammed the perimeter fence. I switched the camera feed to the driveway. 3 black, armored trucks were tearing up the lawn. Men in tactical gear were spilling out. They weren't police. They weren't private security. They were mercenaries. The cipher, I whispered. He's fast. They're here. Dominique screamed, looking out the guesthouse window. Imani. Let us out. They'll kill us. We have the codes. You have nothing. I shouted back. I had a choice. I could stay in the main house, fortified but alone, my heart failing, while an army of killers breached my doors. Or I could do the unthinkable. I could use the layout. I could use the trap. I unlocked the guesthouse door. Run, I told them over the intercom. Terrence and Dominique burst out of the guest house, running across the lawn toward the backwoods, thinking they were free. But I hadn't unlocked the perimeter gate. They ran straight into the floodlights of the mercenaries who had just breached the rear wall. Target acquired, a voice shouted over the external speakers. I watched on the monitors as Terrence and Dominique were tackled, zip-tied, and thrown into the back of one of the trucks. They were screaming, blaming each other, blaming me. It was her. It was the architect. She tricked us. Terrence yelled. The lead mercenary, a man wearing a ballistic mask, looked at the house. He looked directly into the camera lens. He tapped his earpiece. Then, he walked toward the front door. He wasn't leaving. He had the thieves. Now he wanted the architect. He wanted the real money. I stumbled back from the panel. My heart skipped a beat, then fluttered wildly. I fell to my knees. The darkness of the house swirled around me. I was alone. I was poisoned. And a hit squad was breaking down my door. I needed a weapon. But I didn't have a gun. I hated guns. I had a house. A smart house. A house I had built to be a fortress. But a fortress needs a commander. And I was fading. I crawled toward the basement stairs. The server room. The bunker. It was the only safe place left. I dragged myself down the steps, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I reached the heavy steel door. I scanned my retina. Access granted. I fell inside, hitting the cool floor. The room hummed with the sound of the real servers. The blue light was soothing. I pulled myself into my chair. I locked the door. Lockdown, level 10. Steel bolts slammed home. I watched the monitors. The mercenaries were in the house. They were sweeping the rooms. They were heading for Trey's room. No, I whispered. No, you don't. Trey's room was a panic room, but it wasn't invincible. If they had thermite, if they had time. I had to draw them away. I had to bring them to me. I opened the internal comms system. Gentlemen, I said, my voice broadcast into every room of the house. The mercenaries froze. You are trespassing. I suggest you leave. Architect, a distorted voice replied. It was the man in the mask. We know you're in the basement. We know you're sick. Give us the real key. Give us the onyx ledger. And we leave the boy alone. They knew about the poison. Terrence must have talked in the truck. Come and get it, I rasped. We're coming. They moved toward the basement door. They were ignoring Trey's room. Good. I looked at my console. I had built a failsafe. A scorched earth protocol. It was designed to magnetically wipe the servers in case of a physical breach. But it had a secondary function. The servers were liquid-cooled. The coolant was a proprietary chemical blend. Highly efficient. And highly flammable if exposed to an electrical arc. I could blow the servers. I could destroy the ledger. I could destroy the money. It would bankrupt my clients. It would ruin my reputation. But it would kill the men outside that door. And it would save my son. But there was another way. A way to save the money and kill the threat. I looked at the smart home integration. The fire suppression system. It wasn't water. Water destroys electronics. It was halon gas. It sucks the oxygen out of the room to starve a fire. It also starves humans. But the halon system was only installed in the server room. Where I was. If I triggered it, I would suffocate. Unless I could trigger it outside. In the hallway. I checked the schematics. No. The hallway was water sprinklers. Useless against tactical gear. Wait. The ventilation recirculate. The system I had used to scare Terrence. The server room shared a primary air duct with the basement hallway. If I reversed the intake fans, I could pump the halon out of the server room and into the hallway where they were setting up the breaching charges. But I would have to expose myself to the gas to manually override the valve. I looked at my son on the monitor. He was sleeping, clutching his bear. Daddy has a lover, he had whispered. Daddy was gone. It was just us now. I stood up. My legs shook. I grabbed a portable oxygen mask from the emergency wall kit. I put it on. It had 15 minutes of air. I walked to the back of the server racks. To the manual valve override. I watched the monitor. The mercenaries were placing C4 on the door. Breaching in 3, 2. I turned the wheel. Hiss. A massive, deafening roar as the Halon tanks emptied. I hit the fan reverse switch. The gas, heavy and invisible, was sucked out of the room and blasted into the hallway. On the monitor, the mercenaries staggered. The fire requires oxygen. C4 requires a spark, which requires oxygen to burn. The explosion didn't happen. The detonator clicked, but the chemical reaction fizzled in the oxygen-deprived air. But the men, they grabbed their throats. They fell. One by one. Halon works fast. It displaces air. They were unconscious in 20 seconds. I slumped against the server rack. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. The digitalis was peaking. I checked my pulse. 140, I was going into fibrillation. I had saved the money. I had stopped the bad guys. But I was dying in a locked room. Then, my computer pinged. An incoming video call. From the cipher. The real one. Not the mercenaries. The boss. I answered. A face appeared. A man in shadows. Digital distortion. You are impressive, architect, a synthesized voice said. You neutralized my retrieval team. You tricked my mule. You are a worthy adversary. I want my son safe, I gasped into the mask. Your son is irrelevant to me, the cipher said. I want the ledger. The real one. You can't have it, I said. I'll burn it. If you burn it, I will burn everything you love. Starting with the boy. My vision went black for a second. I have a counteroffer, I wheezed. You are in no position to negotiate. You are dying. I am, I agreed. But I have the one thing you don't. I have the pattern. What pattern? The glitch, I lied. I had to buy time. The flaw in the blockchain. The one that let me build the sandbox. If I die, the flaw is patched. You'll never be able to steal again. The cipher paused. Greed. It always worked. Talk, he said. Send, medical, I gasped. Send, an ambulance. Save me, and I give you the key to the back door of the Federal Reserve. It was a bluff. A massive, desperate bluff. If this is a trick. Check my heart rate, I said, linking my watch to the stream. I have 2 minutes. The cipher looked at the data. Agreed, he said. Medical team is inbound. Do not die, architect. You are too expensive. The screen went black. I lay on the floor. I had traded a lie for a life. Now I just had to survive long enough to make the lie true. The world came back in a rush of white light and the sharp sting of a needle in my chest. Sinus rhythm returning, a voice said. BPM stabilizing at 85. She's back. I gasped, sucking in air that tasted of ozone and antiseptic. I wasn't on the floor of the server room anymore. I was on a gurney in my own living room, surrounded by a mobile medical team that moved with military precision. The mercenaries, the ones I had gassed, were gone. Terrence and Dominique were gone. Standing over me was a man I had never seen, but whose voice I recognized from the distorted call. He was wearing a bespoke gray suit, holding a tablet. He looked like a banker, but his eyes were dead. The cipher. Welcome back, architect, he said smoothly. That was a close call. Digitalis toxicity is unpleasant. I sat up, my head swimming. My son? He is still asleep in the panic room, the cipher said. We did not breach the door. We kept our end of the bargain. You are alive. The boy is safe. Now, the payment. He held out the tablet. It displayed a complex, rolling code, the encryption key to the Onyx ledger. "You promised me the glitch," he said. "The flaw in the blockchain. The backdoor to the Federal Reserve." I looked at him. I looked at the medical team, who were packing up their gear. I looked at the empty space where my husband used to be. "I lied," I said. The room went still. The cipher's face didn't move, but the air pressure seemed to drop. "Lying to me," he said softly, "is usually a terminal condition." "I didn't lie about the glitch," I corrected, swinging my legs off the gurney. I felt weak, but my mind, my greatest weapon, was firing on all cylinders. I lied about what it was. I stood up. I walked over to the wall panel, which was now rebooting. "You see," I said, tapping the screen, "you thought Terrence was the one who found you. You thought he reached out to the dark web to launder the money. But Terrence is an idiot. He couldn't find the dark web if you gave him a flashlight and a map." I turned to face the cipher. "I found you." This was the final hidden secret. "I knew someone was probing my firewalls for 6 months," I explained. "Subtle pings. Ghost protocols. It was sophisticated. Too sophisticated for a rival bank. It was you. You were looking for a way in. So I gave you one." I pointed to the door where Terrence had let the mercenaries in. "I didn't just build a sandbox for Terrence. I built a honeypot for you. I knew Terrence was cheating. I knew he was greedy. I let him think he was stealing, knowing he would run to a launderer. I used my husband as bait to catch the biggest financial predator in the world." The cipher stared at me. A slow, appreciative smile spread across his face. "You used your own murder plot as a sting operation?" "I'm a multitasker," I said. "But you are still vulnerable," he noted. "I am here. My men are here. You have no leverage." "Don't I?" I typed a command into the wall panel. "Execute, protocol reflection." The large screens in the living room flared to life. They showed a server farm. Not mine. His. The cipher's eyes widened. That's my hub. In Estonia." "It was," I said. "Until about 10 minutes ago. While I was dying, my watch was broadcasting a signal. A virus. It wrote the connection of your video call right back to your source. It mapped your entire network. Every wallet. Every dirty transaction. Every identity you've ever stolen." I held up my wrist. The smartwatch was pulsing red. "I own you, Cipher. I have your ledger. And unlike you, I don't want to steal money. I want to clean it." "You're bluffing," he hissed. "Check your tablet," I said. He looked down. His screen had gone black, replaced by a single, white logo. "The architect." "I just froze your assets," I said. "All of them. You are currently worth $0. The cipher looked at me. For the first time, he looked afraid. "What do you want?" "I want a partner," I said. "A silent one. You have the infrastructure to monitor the dark web. I have the code to control it. We are going to merge." "Merge?" "You work for me now," I said. "We are going to police the system. You will find the hackers, the thieves, the Terrences of the world. And I will shut them down. In exchange, I give you back 10% of your fortune. Enough to retire. Or enough to run." He looked at the screen. He looked at me. He realized he was in the presence of a superior predator. "Agreed," he whispered. 1 hour later. The house was clear. The cipher and his team were gone. But 2 people remained. I walked out to the driveway. A police cruiser was there, lights flashing silently. Detective Miller stood by the car. In the back seat sat Terrence and Dominique. They were cuffed. They looked like wraiths. The halon gas had knocked them out, but they had woken up to a nightmare. I tapped on the glass. Terence looked up. His eyes were red, his skin gray. He saw me, alive, standing tall, the mistress of the house. I rolled down the window. "Imani." He wept. "Imani, please. I didn't know. I didn't know about the gas. I didn't know about the hit." "You knew enough to count the money," I said coldly. "It was her," he screamed, looking at Dominique. "She poisoned you. She made me do it." Dominique didn't even look at him. She just stared ahead, her face a mask of defeat. She knew the game was over. "You're right, Terence," I said. "She poisoned my body. But you? You poisoned my life. You slept in my bed, ate my food, and plotted to kill me because you were too lazy to work." I leaned in close. "I didn't call the police for the theft," I whispered. "The money was never real. I called them for the attempted murder." I held up the vial of digitalis I had recovered from Dominique's purse before the cops arrived. "Fingerprints," I said. "Yours. And hers. On the weapon." "No," he moaned. "Imani, think of Trey. You can't send his father to prison." "Trey's father died a long time ago," I said. "You're just the thief who broke into our house." I nodded to Detective Miller. "Take them." As the car drove away, carrying the debris of my past life, I didn't feel sad. I felt light. The resolution. Terence and Dominique were charged with conspiracy to commit capital murder, attempted murder, and grand larceny. The digital evidence I provided, the logs of the fake theft, the texts with the mercenaries, edited to protect my new partner, and the poisoned coffee cup, was overwhelming. They were sentenced to life in prison. Terence spends his days in a cell, telling anyone who will listen that he used to be a millionaire. They call him the dreamer. But my legacy was not a foundation. It was a new world order. I didn't go back to consulting. I launched Onyx Security. It is a private, global firm that oversees the digital security of 80% of the world's banking transactions. We are the invisible shield. We hunt the hackers. We freeze the thieves. And Mike's silent partner, the man formerly known as the Cypher, runs my threat detection unit. He is terrified of me. As he should be. I am no longer just Imani Brooks. I am the architect. I live in my fortress. My son, Trey, is now 10. He is learning to code. He knows that his mother is a superhero who fights bad guys with math. I found my peace, not in hiding, but in total, absolute control. I built a wall around my life, and this time I made sure I held the only key. What this story teaches us is that you should never mistake a mother's silence for ignorance. She sees everything. And if you try to hack her heart, she will rewrite your entire reality. If you believe that the smartest person in the room is the one you least suspect, hit that like button. And subscribe to this channel, because we are decoding the truth, one story at a time. We'll see you in the next one.